Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel Legal Decipher. In the previous video, we had talked about Chapter 16 of the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973. If you have not seen that video, you can go and check it. The link is in the description below. Today, we are going to talk about Chapter 17 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. We'll go through the chapter and try to understand how the criminal codes work and how the Criminal Procedure Code is followed. So if you are new here, please like and subscribe to my channel so you can get the video notifications. So let's get started. So today we are going to learn chapter 17 that talks about charge. Now we had already previously discussed about this, that what is a charge? A charge is the set of allegations that are brought against an accused. So section 211 says the contents of charge. What shall a charge contain? So every charge under this code shall state the offense with which the accused is charged. So the charge will specify the offense that the accused is charged of. And if the law which creates the offense gives it any specific name, say for example it falls within the purview of the Indian Penal Code, and the Indian Penal Code has already described such offense with a name. Say for example the person is accused of killing of a person, then such an offense has been described as murder in the IPC. So the charge will contain the name of that offense if it is described by such law. And if the law which creates the offense does not give it any specific name, then so much of the definition of the offense that is there must be stated as to give the accused notice of what matter with which he is charged. So it is very important to tell the accused as to what he is charged of. What is the nature of offense that he has committed? The information must be provided to the accused. And if no law has described such an offense with a name, then the nature of the offense that the accused person has committed must be conveyed to that accused in order to inform him as to what he is charged with. Now, the law and section of the law against which the offense is said to have been committed shall be mentioned in the charge. So if the accused is charged with the offense of rape, then he will be informed that he has committed an offense under section 376 of the Indian Penal Code. That is the punishment of rape. So subsection 5 says that if it is a fact that the charge is made, then it is always equivalent to a statement that says that every legal condition required by law to constitute such offense was fulfilled in that particular case. So if a person is charged with murder, say for example, then if he is charged with that section, then it will be thought that he had already done such and such act as to establish the constitution of such offense, that he has actually committed that offense. Whenever he is charged with that, it is then and there established that that person has done such and such act. So there will no need to be differently proving that fact, that whether he has committed that offense or not. Now subsection 6 says the charge shall be written in the language of the court. So the charge will be written in that language which the court works on. And if the accused having been previously convicted of any offense, so if the accused person who is accused with a charge has previously been convicted in any offense, then that person is liable by reason of such previous conviction to enhanced punishment or to punishment of a different kind for a subsequent offense. And it is the intention to prove such previous conviction for the purpose of affecting the punishment which the court may think fit to award for the subsequent offense. So if the situation arises like this, that the person has previously committed an offense and he has subsequently committed another offense, now in the subsequent case the court must mention the previous offense for any kind of enhancement of punishment or putting a different kind of punishment upon that person for such subsequent offense, then in that case the date, place and fact of the previous conviction shall also be stated in the charge. And if such statement has been omitted, then the court may add it at any time before passing such sentence. So that facts, time and place of the previous conviction will have to be stated in the subsequent conviction, and the court may add it at any time before passing the subsequent sentence. Now section 212 talks about particulars as to time, place and person. The charge that is framed against the accused must contain the particulars as to time and place of the alleged offense, where it was committed and when it was committed will be mentioned there, and it will give sufficient and reasonable information to the accused and as to what kind of offense he has committed. When the accused is charged with criminal breach of trust or dishonest misappropriation of money or other movable property, then in these two cases it shall be sufficient to specify the gross sum or describe the movable property in respect of which the offense is alleged to have been committed and the dates between which the offense is alleged to have been committed, without specifying particular items or exact dates. So, if the offense is regarding a criminal breach of trust or a dishonest misappropriation of money or other movable property, then in these cases the accused will be charged with the offenses, and that charge will contain and specify the gross sum, that is the subject matter of the case, the gross sum upon which he has made any criminal breach of trust or any dishonest misappropriation of money. Or it may also contain the description of the movable property, just a rough description of the movable property as to this and this was that subject matter upon which you have done any criminal breach of trust or dishonest misappropriation of property, and the dates between which the offense was alleged. So the charge will contain that between this and this date you have committed such an offense, without specifying particular items, that means the list of items in details or exact dates. The charge does not need to do that. The charge should only contain that between this and this date you have done this offense upon this amount of money or this movable property, with a rough description of that property. This will be the contents of the charge. Now, provided that the time included between the first and last of such dates shall not exceed 1 year. So where the offense was committed within a year, within the time span of a year, that is not exceeding 12 months, then the first and last date should be mentioned and it shall be said that the offense was committed within these two dates. It shall be mentioned in the charge. Now, let's move on to section 213. It says, when manner of committing offense must be stated. So, the nature of the case is such that the particulars mentioned in 211 and 212 does not give the accused with sufficient notice of the matter as to what he was charged with. So, if the offense is of that kind, that section 211 and 212 guidelines are followed, but still it is not sufficient as to describe the accused about the nature of his offense, then in that case the charge shall also contain such particulars of the manner in which the alleged offense was committed as will be sufficient for that purpose. So it will be mentioned in the charge to inform the accused that you have done this and this act that constitutes this offense. It will be in that format. It will be mentioned there. Now the next section is section 214. It says, words in charge taken in sense of law under which offense is punishable. And this section says that when a person is framed with a charge, then the charge should contain those words. That means the words that will describe the charge will be used in that exact format as it is written about the offense in a particular code or law. So say for example, if the person is charged with murder as per section 300 of the IPC, then such person will be framed with a charge of murder as per the contents of section 300. So the exact words that are used in section 300 will be used to describe the offender as to what he has done. In the charge it will be mentioned like this, that you have done such and such thing. Those exact words will be used to describe the offense that are used to describe the term murder in IPC. Now section 215 talks about effect of errors. So it says that no error in stating either the offense or the particulars that is required to be stated in a charge, and no omission to state the offense or those particulars shall be regarded at any stage of the case. So when the charge requires to state the particulars of the said offense that the person is charged with, then there shall be no error in stating such, or no omission shall be done to describe the offense or give the particulars. Now let's move on to section 216, which says the court may alter charge. So once the charge is framed, the accused will be tried with such charges in that case, but the court may subsequently alter the charge. So the court can alter the charge at any time of the proceeding. It may alter it or add some charges that were not previously added to the particular proceedings. Now the court can do so before passing the judgment. Now every such alteration or addition shall be read and explained to the accused. So we already know that whenever a charge is framed against an accused, then the accused is read over the charge. So in this case also that procedure will be followed. Now if the addition or alteration of a charge in that proceedings immediately with the trial is not likely to prejudice the accused in his defense or the prosecutor in the conduct of the case. So if the addition or alteration of charges that is applied to that particular proceedings does not prejudice the accused in his defense or does not prejudice the prosecutor in the conduct of the case, then in that case the court may, after altering or adding such charges, proceed with the trial as if the altered or added charge had been in the original charge. So the court will behave in such a manner as if the charges that are altered or added were already in the suit. Now if the alteration or addition does prejudice to the accused or the prosecutor, then the court may either direct a new trial or adjourn the trial for such period as may be necessary. So as long as it does not prejudice, then it will be deemed as if such charges were previously present in the case and it will flow as normal. But if the adding or altering of charges prejudices the accused or prosecutor, then the court may follow any of the two possibilities, that is, it may either direct a new trial or it may adjourn the trial for a necessary period. Now if the offense that is stated in the altered or added charge is one for the prosecution of which previous sanction is necessary, and the case shall not be proceeded until such sanction is obtained, then unless such sanction is already obtained for a prosecution on the same facts as those on which the altered or added charge is founded. So this subsection talks about a previous sanction that is necessary to obtain in case of an altered or added charge from the prosecution, unless such sanction has been already obtained on the same facts as on which the altered or added charge is found. Now let's move on to section 217. It says recall of witness when charge altered. So whenever a charge is altered or added by the court after the commencement of the trial, then the prosecutor and the accused both shall be allowed to recall or resummon and examine the witnesses or also call any further witness whom the court may think to be material. So, where a charge is altered or added, then further evidences can be adduced. So, for that purpose, any further witness can also be adduced, or any witness that had already adduced his evidence before the learned court can also be recalled or resummoned and examined further in respect of such added or altered charges. Now let's move on to section 218, which talks about separate charges for distinct offences. Now for every distinct offence of which any person is accused, there shall be a separate charge, and every such charge shall be tried separately. So it says that if the offence is distinct than another offence, so there are two kinds of offences, both are done by the same accused, but they are of the nature different from each other, then in that case the person that is so accused, he shall be framed with separate charges for every such distinct offence, and they shall be tried separately, provided that where the accused person by an application in writing so desires, the magistrate is of the opinion that such person is not likely to be prejudiced thereby, the magistrate may try together all or any number of such charges framed against such person. So now what happens is that the person who is accused of those offences finds out that he has, say for example, more than one number of charges that are framed against him, that are to be tried against him. Then in that case the person who is so accused may in writing put an application before such magistrate and pray for trying together all those charges. Now if the court thinks or is of the opinion that if it is not done so, then the accused person will be prejudiced, then it will allow. Or if it thinks fit that trying separately of those offences would not affect the accused person anyhow, then the magistrate may also order for separate trials. Now nothing in the subsection 1 shall affect the operation of the provisions of section 219, 20, 21 and 23. So all the next sections that are mentioned here will not be affected or disturbed by this subsection 1. Now let's move on to section 219. It says 3 offences of same kind within a year may be charged together. So when a person is accused of more offences than one of the same kind committed within the space of 12 months. So the person commits same kind of offences 3 times within 12 months. Then from the first to the last of such offences, whether in respect of the same person or not, he may be charged with and tried at one trial for number of them not exceeding 3. So whenever a person has committed 3 same kind of offences within 12 months of time, then all such offences that were committed, if they are up to 3, and it does not matter whether they were committed against the same person or against different persons, that accused, if he commits 3 of such offences which are closely related to each other within a time period of 12 months, then those offences will be tried together. Now subsection 2 says that offences that are of same kind, when they are punishable with the same amount of punishment under Indian Penal Code or any special or local law, then they will be thought to be offences of the same kind. So when will those offences be deemed as offences of the same kind? When they are punishable with the same amount of punishment under the same section of Indian Penal Code or any other special or local law. Now provided that an offence punishable under section 379, so 378 is the definition of theft and 379 is the punishment for theft of the Indian Penal Code, then it shall be deemed to be an offence of the same kind. As an offence punishable under section 380. This proviso talks about an example that we can give here. It says that where 379 and 380 are the two offenses that are committed by the same person, then these offenses have same kind of punishment and they will be deemed to be offenses of the same kind, and that offense punishable under any section of the said code or special or local law shall be deemed to be an offense of the same kind as an attempt to commit such offense. Then the attempt to commit such offense will also come within this purview, and when such offense is attempted, this will be the procedure for trying that. Now let's move on to section 220. It talks about trial for more than one offense. So if in one series of act, so there is a series of act that is so connected together as to form the same transaction, then he may be charged with and tried at one trial for every such offense. The person who has committed the offense has committed a series of acts that are so connected together that they form the same transaction. Okay, now in this case, more than one offenses are committed by the same person, but he will always be charged with and tried at one trial for every such offense. Okay, now when a person charged with one or more offenses of criminal breach of trust and dishonest misappropriation of property, then the accused for committing such offenses or for the purpose of facilitating or concealing the commission of that offense, then one or more offenses or falsification of accounts he may charged with and tried at one trial for every such offense. So this is also an example, the criminal breach of trust or dishonest misappropriation of property, when a person commits these kind of offenses, and if he, for the purpose of concealing the commission of such offense, if he does more offenses such as falsification of accounts and etc., then the main offense and this offense will always be tried at one trial for every such offense, and he will be charged with such offenses. Subsection 3 says that if the acts that are alleged constitute an offense falling within two or more separate definitions of any law in force for the time being, by which offenses are defined or punished, then the person accused of them may be charged with and tried at one trial for each such offense. So if the person commits more than one offenses and those offenses fall within two or more separate definitions of any law in force, now this person will be accused of them and he may be charged with and tried with at one trial for each of such offenses. And subsection 4 says that if several acts of which one or more by itself would be constituting an offense, then if those offenses can be combined to make an entirely different offense, then the person accused of them may be charged with and tried at one trial for the offense that was constituted by combining those offenses, and for any offense constituted by any one or more of such acts. So let's understand this. Say for example, the person commits a series of such acts that can be combined together to make an entirely different matter or different offense. So in this case, the person will not be separately tried for each of those acts that were committed by him. Rather, all those acts, if they can be combined and be made into an entirely different offense, then the person will be so tried with that offense that was constituted by combining all those small acts. Now, nothing combined in this section shall affect section 71 of the Indian Penal Code. So section 71 of the Indian Penal Code will not be disturbed by anything that is contained in this section. Now what will happen when it is doubtful as to what offense has been committed? Section 221 talks about this aspect. It says if a single act or series of acts is committed and the nature of those acts are doubtful as to which of several offenses the facts which can be proved will constitute. So, if the person who is accused of a crime has committed a single act or a series of acts, then in that case, if it is doubtful to pigeonhole that particular act into a particular offense, then the accused may be charged with having committed all or any of such offenses, and any number of such charges may be tried at once, or he may be charged in the alternative with having committed some one of the said offenses. So what happens is that a person shall be framed with a charge. That is the basic concept we need to understand. Now, if the person has done such a kind of act or such series of acts that they do not actually or precisely form a part of anything that we can specifically term that this person has committed this offense, then we cannot go ambiguous. We will have to pigeonhole those acts into particular offenses. We will have to term them as to this person has committed this offense. So in order to do so, if it is necessary, then he may be tried with or charged with any number of such charges that may be tried at once. Now, if in such a case the accused is charged with one offense and it appears in evidence that he had committed a different offense for which he may have been charged under the provisions of subsection 1, then he may be convicted of the offense which he is shown to have committed, although he was not charged with it. So what happens is that if a person, say for example, has been charged with a particular offense, and in the process of taking evidences and all the material documents that are submitted before the court came into a view, or the court understood that this person has been charged with a particular offense, but disclosing all the materials or documents or evidences, it appeared to the court that the person had committed a different offense that he was not charged with. Then what will happen? Will the court be able to punish that person according to the newfound charges? Yes. That is written in subsection 2. It says that he may be convicted of the offense which he is shown to have committed, although he was not charged with it. So it doesn't matter whether he was charged with that offense or not. If the evidences are disclosed and it is found out that the person has committed a different offense, then he may also be charged with it, whether or not he was previously charged of it or not. Now let's move on to section 222. It talks about some conditions that may likely arise in a case. What are they? They are, say for example, suppose a situation where a person is charged with an offense that consists of several particulars, that the person has done this and this acts. Now, if out of all those acts, a combination of act completes a minor offense and such combination is proved, but the remaining particulars are not proved, then what will happen? Then he may be convicted of that minor offense, though he was not charged with it. So the person was not charged with such minor offense, but the series of acts that he has done, if they are proved and a particular combination out of those several acts came together to form a complete minor offense, so that offense was completed. That means it was proved before the court that the combination of these particular acts has made a complete offense. The offense needs to be complete, okay? And if it is a minor offense, then the accused will be charged with that minor offense, and the rest of the remaining particulars that are not proved will not be dealt with. Now, when a person is charged with an offense and facts are proved which reduce it to a minor offense, so the person is charged with any kind of offense, and then when facts are proved regarding that case, then the court finds out that those facts indicate that the person has committed a minor offense. So first he was charged with something else, then the facts prove that he had committed a minor offense. So the charge was reduced to a minor offense. Then he may be convicted of the minor offense although he is not charged with. So proof of fact is the ultimate condition. A person may not be charged with a particular act, but if the proof of such fact is founded by the court, then the person will be charged with that offense only, whether or not he was previously charged with it or not. Now, when a person is charged with an offense, he may be convicted of an attempt to commit such offense, although the attempt is not separately charged. So that will also happen. He will also be convicted for the attempt to commit an offense. Now, nothing in this section shall be deemed to authorize a conviction of any minor offense where the conditions requisite for the initiation of proceeding in respect of that minor offense has not been satisfied. So, all that things that are contained in this section shall not authorize a conviction of any minor offense where the conditions requisite for the initiation of proceeding in respect of that minor offense has not been satisfied. So first, the conditions that are necessary to be proved to constitute that minor offense needs to be satisfied before the court. Then only that person will be authorized to a conviction of such minor offense, otherwise not. Now let's move on to the next section, that is section 223. It says what persons may be charged jointly. So this section is basically a list of those persons who may be charged and tried together. Who are they? The persons accused of the same offense committed in the course of same transaction. So if the offenses are committed in the course of same transaction, then all those persons who had committed those offenses will be tried together. Also, the persons accused of an offense and persons accused of abatement or attempt to commit such offense will also be charged together and tried. So if a person has abated or attempted the commission of such offense and such person who have actually done that offense, those two persons will also be tried and charged together. Now, persons accused of more than one offense of the same kind within the meaning of section 219 that we had already read, if they are committed by them jointly within the period of 12 months. So if those persons have committed the same kind of offense more than once, then if they are committed within 12 months, then they will be jointly charged and tried. Now, persons accused of different offenses committed in the course of the same transaction. Say for example, a person has committed an offense and another person has committed another offense, but they had both committed those offenses in the same transaction. Then they will also be charged and tried together. Now, persons accused of an offense which includes theft, extortion, cheating, criminal misappropriation, etc., and the persons accused of receiving or retaining or assisting in the disposal or concealment of those properties that are subject to such theft, extortion, cheating, or criminal misappropriation, then these persons will be charged and tried together. Or if such person has abated or attempted the commission of any such offense. Now, the persons accused of offenses under section 411 and 414 of the Indian Penal Code, or either of those sections in respect of stolen property, the possession of which has been transferred by one offense, they will also be tried and charged together. Now, persons accused of any offense that are under chapter 12 of the Indian Penal Code relating to counterfeit of coin, and persons accused of any other offense in the said chapter relating to the same coin or abatement or attempting to any such commission of offense, these people will also be charged and tried together. Now, provided that where a number of persons are charged with separate offenses and such persons do not fall within any of the categories specified in this section, then in that case, the magistrate or court of sessions, whoever may be in charge of the trial, if such person by an application in writing so desires, then he may apply before such magistrate or court of sessions to join the charges and try together. And if the magistrate or court of sessions, as the court may be, if he is satisfied that the person would not be prejudicially affected, and if it is expedient to do so, then he may try all such persons together. Now let's move on to the last section of this chapter, that is withdrawal of remaining charges on conviction of one of several charges. So when a charge containing more heads than one is framed against the same person. Okay, now when a conviction has been on one or more of them, then the complainant or the officer conducting the prosecution may, with the consent of the court, withdraw the remaining charges, or the court of its own accord may stay the inquiry or trial of such charge, and such withdrawal shall have effect of an acquittal of such charges, unless the conviction be set aside. What happens is that if the same accused person is charged with more than one head of charges, then if that person is already serving a conviction and the court thinks fit, or the complainant or the officer conducting the prosecution thinks fit, that the rest of the charges that are remaining may be withdrawn, that these charges are not anymore necessary to be tried with in relation to that particular convict, because he is already serving a sentence, then in that case the court may withdraw such charges, and in this case the withdrawal of such charge will be deemed as if such charges were acquitted. So the accused person will be thought to be acquitted of those charges. So that's all in this video. If you like my videos, then don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching this video.